Evil rarely walks into our lives wearing a warning sign. It doesn't always shout, and it rarely looks like the monsters we imagine in stories. Instead, it often hides in plain sight, disguised as a friend, a partner, even someone who claims to care. That's what makes it so dangerous. You may already be dealing with such a person without realizing it. They smile when you stumble, twist the truth until you doubt yourself, and quietly drain the light from your spirit. The real question is, would you recognize the signs before the damage is done? When we speak of evil, it is easy to imagine something supernatural or exaggerated, a force so dark that it could never blend into daily life. But the reality is far quieter and far more unsettling. Evil often takes shape not in dramatic moments, but in small choices repeated over time. It is not a single mistake or a moment of weakness, but a pattern that corrodes the people around it. A Stoic would remind us that what matters most is not what someone claims to be, but what their actions reveal. Words can disguise, but behavior unmasks. Think of a clear glass of water that has been poisoned. To the eye, it looks pure and safe. Yet the one who drinks from it soon becomes sick. In the same way, a person who appears friendly or harmless may carry with them intentions that slowly destroy trust, peace, and dignity. This is why recognizing evil is less about labeling someone based on a single action and more about watching the consistency of their character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. A person who chooses envy, cruelty, and deceit repeatedly begins to reflect those choices in every part of their being. You can see it in how they treat the vulnerable, how they react when they are not being watched, and how they respond to another's suffering. Evil, then, is not a mask someone puts on temporarily. It is a dye that stains their soul until their presence leaves others weaker, smaller, and wounded. Understanding this nature is the first step in seeing clearly. The first sign that you are dealing with an evil person is that they find satisfaction in your suffering. This may not always be obvious. Rarely will they openly laugh at your pain, but you will notice subtle hints. Perhaps their smile lingers a little too long when you fail. Perhaps their words, disguised as concern, carry an undertone of pleasure when you share your struggles. To them, your hardship is not something to comfort, but something to savor. A person of sound character feels the weight of another's misfortune. Even if they cannot help, they share in the sorrow because empathy binds us together as human beings. An evil person lacks this connection. They feed on weakness and take quiet joy in the missteps of others. It strengthens their sense of superiority, as if your pain lifts them higher. Imagine two neighbors. One hears that your business has failed and comes with food to support you. The other hears the same news and whispers with a grin to others, pleased that you are no longer a competitor. The same event reveals two different natures. The Stoics taught that pain is a natural part of life, and it cannot be avoided. But there is a difference between enduring suffering with courage and celebrating another's downfall. To rejoice in misery is to strip yourself of humanity. When you see someone consistently finding joy in what harms others, you are not simply looking at weakness, you are staring at corruption. This is the first mark of an evil soul. The second sign of an evil person is their relationship with the truth. While everyone may occasionally stumble, forget details, or even stretch reality, the difference with an evil person is that deception becomes their way of life. They twist facts, bend stories, and manipulate reality to serve their own advantage. A truth to them is not sacred. It is clay to be reshaped for control. Think of a conversation where you recall something clearly, but the other person insists you are mistaken, not once, but repeatedly, until you begin to question your own memory. This is no accident. It is a deliberate tactic designed to weaken your confidence and make you dependent on their version of events. In modern terms, this is called gaslighting, but the Stoics would recognize it simply as the corruption of reason. For the Stoics, truth was the foundation of virtue. Epictetus taught that the one who lies damages not only those around them, but first and foremost their own soul, because they distance themselves from reality. An evil person has little concern for this. Their priority is not to live in accordance with nature, but to twist nature to fit their desires. The danger of this trait is profound. If you cannot rely on someone's words, trust crumbles. If you cannot rely on their version of reality, your own clarity begins to blur. And once clarity is gone, it becomes easier for them to lead you into confusion, dependency, and even despair. The manipulation of truth is not a small flaw. It is a weapon. And when wielded repeatedly, it marks the presence of an evil heart. The third sign of an evil person is their willingness to exploit trust. Trust is one of the most valuable bonds between human beings. It is fragile, and once broken, it cannot be easily repaired. A good person, even when flawed, tries to honor the trust given to them. An evil person, however, sees trust not as a gift to protect, but as an opportunity to exploit. Picture someone who acts like a loyal friend in public, but secretly undermines you when your back is turned. They listen closely when you share your fears, not to comfort you, but to store that information for a day when they can use it against you. To them, your openness is not a bridge for connection, it is a weapon placed into their hands. The Stoics would call this a corruption of duty. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the natural bonds between people, the way we are meant to act for the common good. When someone deliberately betrays this bond, they do not just harm you, they harm the very fabric of community. Trust is the glue of society. Without it, families fall apart, friendships wither, and nations collapse. Evil shows itself most clearly in betrayal because betrayal requires intent. It is not an accident. It is not a careless mistake. It is a conscious choice to violate the faith another person placed in you. And once that line has been crossed, you begin to see the truth. The betrayer values power, advantage, or pleasure more than the sacred responsibility of loyalty. When you witness someone exploiting trust again and again, you are not dealing with a flawed human. You are facing the deliberate work of evil. The fourth sign of an evil person is their absence of genuine remorse. Everyone makes mistakes. To be human is to stumble, to sometimes wound others without intending to, but the measure of character is found in what follows. A person of integrity feels the weight of their actions. They may not be able to undo the harm, but they seek to make amends, to learn, and to grow. An evil person does not. Instead, they dismiss their wrongdoing as trivial, shift blame onto others, or deliver shallow apologies designed only to preserve appearances. Their words may sound smooth, but their heart remains untouched. They are not concerned with repairing the damage, they are concerned with protecting their image. If they ever admit fault, it is only because they believe it will grant them more control or lessen the consequences they face. This lack of remorse is one of the clearest windows into a corrupted soul. Epictetus once said that the worst harm a person can suffer is the harm they do to their own character. An evil person feels no such pain because their conscience has grown dull. Repeatedly ignoring the inner voice that calls us back to virtue, they silence it until it no longer speaks at all. Imagine someone who lies to you, gets caught, and then apologizes, only to repeat the same deception a week later. That is not weakness. That is willful indifference to right and wrong. True remorse changes behavior. False remorse only hides it. When you encounter someone who injures others, yet carries on as if nothing happened, you are not looking at a moment of human failure. You are standing before a person who has chosen corruption over conscience. The fifth sign of an evil person is their relentless hunger for control. Every human being desires some measure of influence over life, but for the virtuous, that influence begins with the self, discipline over thoughts, mastery of emotions, command over choices. The Stoics taught that this is where true freedom lies. An evil person, however, seeks control not of themselves but of others. Their satisfaction comes not from inner mastery, but from bending people to their will. This control is not always loud or violent. Often it begins in subtle ways. They might isolate you from friends under the guise of care, convincing you that only they understand you. They may insist on knowing where you are at all times, disguising domination as concern. Or they might press guilt upon you, making you feel responsible for their happiness, as if your life exists to serve their needs. Over time, your independence weakens, and you find yourself shaped by their demands. The Stoics warned against surrendering your reason to another. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Do not be a slave, even to your own passions." How much more dangerous it is then to become a slave to another person's will. Evil thrives when others submit. The pattern is unmistakable. An evil person cannot be content unless they are above others, pulling the strings, directing the play. But unlike a wise leader who seeks the good of all, they use power to suffocate, not to uplift. When you feel your choices shrinking, your voice silenced, and your will subdued in someone's presence, you are not witnessing care. You are experiencing control. This thirst for domination is not a mere flaw. It is a clear mark of evil. The danger in recognizing evil is not only in identifying it, but in distinguishing it from ordinary human weakness. All people stumble, and all people are capable of cruelty when driven by anger, fear, or ignorance. The line between a mistake and malice is not always clear at first glance. If we rush to label every fault as evil, we risk condemning those who could learn, repent, and change. But if we hesitate too long, we may remain blind to someone whose very nature is bent on harm. This is the challenge: to see clearly without prejudice, and to judge without haste. Consider a friend who lies once to avoid embarrassment. Compare that to another who lies consistently, not out of fear, but out of strategy. The first may be guilty of weakness, the second of corruption. The difference lies in intent and repetition. Evil reveals itself through patterns, not isolated acts. The Stoics urged us to exercise discernment. Seneca taught that anger, envy, and deception may arise in any person, but the wise man learns to master them. The one who refuses to master them, who cultivates them as tools, crosses into darker ground. To misjudge this is dangerous. Trusting an evil person leaves you vulnerable to exploitation, but condemning an imperfect yet well-meaning soul breeds injustice and isolation. The task then is to watch carefully. Pay attention not to words alone, but to the consistency of deeds. Evil is patient. It often waits to be revealed. Only by discerning patterns rather than reacting to moments can we protect ourselves without hardening our hearts against all humanity. This balance is the great test of wisdom. One of the most dangerous qualities of an evil person is their ability to hide behind charm. Rarely do they appear in their true form at the beginning. Instead, they present themselves as generous, attentive, even admirable. They may shower you with compliments, offer help when you least expect it, or appear unusually understanding. This charm disarms suspicion. It creates an illusion of goodness that blinds you to their deeper intentions. History is full of examples of leaders who seemed benevolent at first. They promised justice, prosperity, or peace, and their followers believed them because the surface shone so brightly. Yet beneath the polished exterior, their hearts were set on power, cruelty, or greed. The people around them were deceived not because the signs weren't there, but because they were hidden under the mask of charisma. This same pattern unfolds in personal relationships. The person who later manipulates, betrays, or dominates often begins as the one who listens the most, smiles the widest, and appears the most reliable. The contrast between the mask and the reality is what makes the discovery so painful. You question your own judgment, wondering how you could have been so blind. The Stoics warned against judging by appearances alone. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must look at the essence of things, not the surface. An evil person knows this weakness in human perception and exploits it. Their charm is not a reflection of virtue, it is a disguise for vice. To see through the mask requires patience and attention. Actions over time will reveal the truth. Appearances are fleeting, but the nature of a soul cannot be hidden forever. Evil does not always arrive with sudden destruction. More often, it seeps quietly into your life, eroding your spirit little by little. At first, you may not notice it. A small insult disguised as humor, a broken promise excused with charm, a subtle shift in the way you feel when you leave their presence, tired, uncertain, diminished. Alone, these moments seem small, but over time they collect, and like drops of water carving stone, they reshape you. This is the subtle corrosion of your spirit. You begin to doubt yourself more than you once did. You hold back your thoughts because you fear how they will twist them. You stop seeking joy in places you once loved because their shadow lingers in your mind. Evil thrives not only in the harm it causes, but in the confidence it drains. It convinces you that the problem is you, not them. And when you accept that lie, you begin to live less fully, less freely, less courageously. The Stoics compared the mind to a citadel, a stronghold that can withstand any storm if guarded with reason and virtue. But if you allow a corrupting influence to dwell within its walls, the fortress weakens from the inside. The enemy no longer needs to attack, for you are dismantling yourself under their influence. This is why evil must be recognized early. It rarely announces itself with a roar. It whispers, it corrodes, and if left unchallenged, it leaves you hollowed out. To protect your spirit, you must be vigilant, not only against great acts of malice, but also against the slow erosion of your strength and clarity. Why do people tolerate evil even when they sense something is wrong? Often, it is not ignorance, but fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being alone, fear of the consequences of standing up to someone who has power over them. There is also the desire to preserve peace at any cost. Many would rather endure quiet harm than risk the storm of confrontation. Others cling to loyalty, believing that if they remain patient long enough, the person will change. But patience with true evil is not mercy, it is surrender. This tolerance creates a dangerous cycle. The evil person learns that their behavior carries no real consequence, so they grow bolder. They test limits, and each time they are met with silence, their control deepens. Meanwhile, those who endure it convince themselves that what they are experiencing is normal or unavoidable. The longer this continues, the harder it becomes to break free. The Stoics warned against building false peace. Seneca wrote that harmony is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. If peace is maintained by ignoring cruelty, it is no peace at all. It is simply quiet oppression. Tolerating evil does not make it fade, it makes it stronger. To recognize this is painful because it demands action. It means choosing discomfort over false comfort, truth over illusion, strength over submission. It means acknowledging that enduring the presence of evil in silence is not a neutral act, it is participation. By failing to resist, we grant it space to grow. The cost of tolerating evil is always greater than the cost of confronting it. Silence in the face of evil is never harmless. It may feel safer to say nothing, to keep the peace, or to hope that someone else will step forward. But silence gives evil permission to continue. Every time wrongdoing is met with quiet acceptance, it grows stronger, more confident, and more deeply rooted. The one who commits the harm learns that there is no real resistance, and those who suffer learn that they are alone. In this way, silence becomes a partner to the very thing it fears. Think of a group of friends who witness one of their own being humiliated or betrayed. They may feel uneasy, but no one speaks up. Instead, they look away, whisper later, or tell themselves it is not their place. In reality, each moment of silence tells the betrayer, "You may continue." The victim, too, hears a message. Your pain does not matter enough to be defended. The cost of that silence is not only the continuation of harm, but the corrosion of trust among everyone present. The Stoics taught that virtue is action, not theory. Epictetus warned that tolerating vice in others is a way of sharing in it. To live in accordance with nature is to act justly, even when it is uncomfortable. Remaining silent does not shield you from guilt. It ties you to the consequences of another's cruelty. The truth is difficult. To confront evil may bring conflict, but refusing to confront it ensures decay. By speaking, you may risk the loss of comfort. By remaining silent, you risk the loss of your soul. In the end, what we choose to ignore often defines us as much as what we choose to do. One of the most powerful defenses against evil is the strength of boundaries. To set a boundary is to declare what you will and will not allow into your life. It is not cruelty. It is not selfishness. It is the simple act of protecting your dignity and your peace of mind. An evil person thrives where there are no limits, where they can intrude, manipulate, and control without resistance. But the moment you establish firm boundaries, their power begins to fade. Boundaries can take many forms. It may be as simple as refusing to entertain certain conversations, walking away when someone tries to provoke, or no longer sharing parts of yourself with those who twist your words. It can also mean distancing yourself completely, even cutting ties when trust has been irreparably broken. These steps may feel heavy, especially if the person is close to you. Yet the Stoics would remind us that duty to the self comes first. You must guard your reason, your character, and your soul above all else. Practical wisdom is knowing that you cannot control another person's actions, but you can control your response. You cannot force them to act justly, but you can deny them access to your mind and heart. Marcus Aurelius spoke of this freedom. No one can harm you without your consent, for the mind remains its own kingdom. Boundaries are the outer walls of that kingdom. Without them, the gates are open and corruption enters freely. With them, you preserve your strength, your clarity, and your freedom. An evil person will resist these walls, but that resistance only proves their necessity. In protecting yourself, you not only escape their influence, you reclaim the authority over your own life. There comes a moment when boundaries alone are not enough. To face evil fully requires courage, the kind that refuses to bend even under pressure. It is tempting to remain quiet, to retreat into safety, to let time pass and hope the problem fades. But evil does not fade on its own. It must be confronted. And that confrontation will always demand strength. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. When you stand up to someone who delights in misery, who manipulates truth, who betrays trust, who feels no remorse and who seeks control, you will feel the weight of risk pressing down on you. They may resist. They may strike back with words or actions meant to break your resolve. But the Stoics would remind us that true harm is not in what others can do to your body or reputation, but in what you allow them to do to your soul. History is filled with examples of those who stood firm even when alone. A single voice refusing to bow has often been enough to inspire others. In your own life, courage may not look like dramatic battles. It may be a quiet but firm no. It may be walking away without explanation. It may be choosing truth when lies are easier. Each act of resistance weakens the grip of evil because evil depends on compliance. The moment you choose courage over fear, something shifts. You reclaim what was taken. You prove to yourself that you are not powerless, and you remind the world that even in the face of darkness, a single light can stand unbroken. Courage, more than anything, is the final answer to evil. The path to seeing evil clearly begins with recognizing its marks. There are 5 signs that stand out above all others. The first is that such a person delights in your misery, feeding off your pain instead of easing it. The second is their distortion of truth, twisting words and reality until you question your own clarity. The third is their betrayal of trust, using your openness not as a bond, but as a weapon. The fourth is their absence of genuine remorse, showing no true change of heart no matter how many times they claim to apologize. And the fifth is their relentless desire for control, a hunger to dominate that leaves you smaller, weaker, and diminished in their presence. To know these signs is not to live in fear, but to live in wisdom. Evil thrives where it goes unnoticed. It grows in confusion, charm, and silence. But when it is named, when its patterns are seen for what they are, its power begins to unravel. Awareness is protection. Clarity is strength. The Stoics would remind us that the wise do not fear the wicked. Fear belongs to those who give away their freedom. The wise simply refuse to walk with them. They do not hate, for hatred is another chain. They do not seek revenge, for revenge ties you to the very thing you wish to escape. Instead, they see, they act, and they move forward with steady steps, uncorrupted and unbroken. Evil cannot always be stopped, but it can always be resisted. And resistance begins with clear vision. To see evil for what it is, without disguise, is to remove its greatest weapon, your blindness. Once you see clearly, you cannot be deceived again. If this helped you see the hidden signs more clearly, stay with us for the next video, where we uncover how to guard your mind and protect your peace in a world full of deception.